best in Aussie and Kiwi Christian music. This is The Green Room on 89.9 Light FM.
89.9 Light FM. This is The Green Room for a Monday night. It's Cam with you, and we've got a very special guest who's popped in to have a chat to us on the show tonight. We've had him on the show before as a part of the Paul Coleman Trio and also as a part of Compassion Day as well. We've spoken to him as an advocate for compassion, but now we're speaking about a solo project which he has just released. It's called Resident Alien. Grant Norsworthy is our guest. Grant, it's great to have a chat to you, mate.
It's great to be here, Cam. Thanks a lot for having me. The Green Room.
The Green Room.
It really is green.
It really is.
Very bright green.
Yeah, thank you. Do you think we should tone it down, or is it okay?
No. Such a great colour.
I need to recall something which I'm not sure if you'll remember this, but we were each in the USA. It was in Nashville, 2004. We were in the Renaissance Hotel.
Right.
So I'm pretty sure it was...
Would that be Gospel Music Association
Week?
It
was indeed, yes. And I was there, and I was at my hotel room, and there was a knock on the door one time, and I thought that it was the old man because I was expecting him to come up from his hotel room.
Room service? You weren't expecting room service?
No, I wasn't expecting room service.
Okay.
Anyway, you were at the front door.
Well, there you go.
The only issue was I was in my underpants. I'm not sure if you can remember that.
No, see, I've blanked that out. Like, I've got selective memory for disturbing things, and that's gone.
No,
I'm
fair
pleased
enough.
to say.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, there you go. Now, mate.
Thanks for that.
Yeah. Now, let's talk about the album. It's called Resident Alien.
Yep.
Where did the thought train start, I suppose, to go, you know what, I want to do a solo album?
Well, I mean, I've always been one of those people who's dreamed of being, the bass player in the band who contributed songs and was part of the creative process, and that certainly is my role within the Paul Coleman Trio. But, Paul is such a magnificent songwriter and so prolific that, to be honest, over the Paul Coleman Trio albums, there hasn't been much of what I would see as my songs. I've certainly had an opportunity to contribute to Paul's, and there's a couple of moments that have been sort of songs that I've brought and Paul's helped me finish and whatever. And Sonic Flood, unfortunately, was a pretty closed door for me. I spent 3 years in that band, and songwriting wasn't an opportunity there for me. I was there as a technician, as a bass player. Yeah. And I enjoyed that role. That was wonderful. So I guess over the years I've had these songs sort of lying around. I've always thought of myself as being someone who could write songs. I never really wanted to be Paul McCartney or John Lennon. I just wanted to be George, a couple of good songs every album.
Yeah.
So I guess over the years, all those couple of good songs every album have sort of stacked up. And then I found myself one day going, how many of these songs that I think are good that should be heard more are lying around? Turns out there's about 15 of them.
Yeah.
So I chose those songs and recorded them, and here we are, Resident Alien.
Fantastic. Now, you tweeted something which I suppose summed up the whole theme of the album as far as I could tell, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you said there's 12 tracks from someone who happily feels like a foreigner everywhere. Is that pretty much how it is?
Yeah, I don't want to come across as some sort of bleeding heart poet or anything like that, but there's 3 layers to this title, Resident Alien. That is my immigration status in the United States, where I've been living for the last 10 years. And as an Australian living in America, I feel like a foreigner. And my resident alien status certainly reminds me of that. It's the green card, if anyone's wondering what that is. I can live there in America, I can work there, but you're not really one of us. And that's okay with me. Like I really enjoy my life in the United States with my wife Brooke and my son Max, and that's good, but we don't really feel at home there. On the other hand, we come back home to Australia and don't totally feel like we belong here either.
Yeah, right.
And we enjoy great relationships with people here, love coming here. But, after about a month here, Brooke and I look at each other and say, let's go home, shall we? Even though we felt like we were home. Yeah. So there's that layer to it as well. But the most important one to me is that, this reminds me that as a follower of Jesus, as someone who has committed his life to be standing for something other than what this world, quote unquote, stands for, I think it's actually a healthy thing for me to feel like this is not really what I'm created for. I'm actually created for something bigger, something different, something that's not quite what this earth offers. In fact, 180 degrees different from what this world offers. So that's the thought there, the 3 layers of it. Yes, I'm a resident alien in America. I feel like a foreigner wherever I go these days, but I'm actually not intended for this planet, not the way it is anyway.
Fantastic stuff. Grant Norsworthy, our guest on the show tonight. Plenty more to talk about. Stick with us on Light FM. This is The Green Room. This is The Green Room for a Monday night, and we're still joined by tonight's special guest in the studio. His name is Grant Norsworthy, about his latest album, which we'll hear the first track off a little bit later on, called Resident Alien. But Grant, when I was in the USA a little while back, and I want to see if this is the same for you. When I was over there, I was, say, ordering a coffee at Starbucks or wherever it was, I would order, and the American people there would just say, "Hey, stop. Can you just talk a little bit more? Can you just say something, anything?" Was that the same for you?
Yes, over and over and over again. And, I don't mind that at all. And in fact, over the last few years, I've actually stopped calling myself a musician.
Okay.
I've started calling myself a speaker who can do some songs. I don't want to think of myself as being one of those sort of singer-songwriters who talks too much between songs. I'm a speaker who can do some music around the edges of the speaking. And having the Australian accent, I can't take credit for it. I was just born somewhere else. But yeah, Americans especially find it a lot easier to listen to than another American accent.
Yeah. And that's in essence what you do with your word and song events as well, isn't it? Yeah.
Right. Word and song is what I call what I do. Grant Norsworthy, word and song. It's just a cover story for music and speaking, not just music.
Yeah. With the songs on the album, did you actually co-write with anybody, or are they all your own stuff?
No, I did do some co-writing actually. A song called Bring Me to My Knees, I co-wrote with Rod Davies here in Melbourne. Some of you might know Rod. He actually just recently toured with John Farnham as one of the backing singers. He's a very talented guy. And way back in the day, Rod and I were in a bar room cover band called Rocket together. So he's a good buddy. And a guy called Ben Kalasik I wrote with, a guy named Mark Sibilia. And there's a song on there that some PC3 fans might remember from the Turn album called Here for Life, Crimson Clover.
Yep.
And I co-wrote that with Paul. And I really messed up here, Cam, I've got to tell you here. Because I called Paul and said, "Mate, I'm re-recording Here for Life, Crimson Clover." And he was really excited for me. He's like, "Great, go for it." And I said, "Mate, but from my recollection, I've removed every part that you wrote, and it wasn't intentional. But this is sort of the recrafting of the song, because I've actually taken a pretty different tack with the song." And he said, "Oh, mate, well, then you shouldn't put me in the writing credits." I'm like, "Oh, well, okay, I just didn't want it to be accurate." And then I gave Paul a copy of the record. He's actually the first person who got to hear it. Yeah. And he said, "Actually, there's still a line in there that I wrote." I'm like, "Oh, no." So anyway, Paul did co-write Here for Life, Crimson Clover, even though it doesn't say that on the credits. But yeah, there's one line in there, a very key line actually, that he wrote. So yeah, co-writing is very important for any songwriter. And I've never wanted to be one of those people like, it's mine, stay away. Let's get out there and something good happens when you interact with others. Yeah, it just is what it is when you collaborate and you create something a little bit better than what you could have done on your own, perhaps. Right. Yeah. And sometimes at the time you don't think it is better, but as time shows and as you step back from it, absolutely. There's something beautiful that flows between relationship, and it can show up in a song. Yeah, absolutely. Now, out of all of the PC3 songs that you could have done, was it only because you had actually co-written on Here for Life that's what you wanted to do, or why was that one picked out of all of them? The Return album that Paul Common Trio released earlier this last year, 2011, April, that was the most collaborative album of all the albums that we've done. And really, as I look back over the albums before that, there were really only two songs, a song called The One and this song Here for Life, Crimson Clover, that I felt I had brought to Phil and to Paul and said, here's a song that I've baked partially. I've had the mixing bowl out and I put the ingredients in, I've stirred it around, and I've partially baked this cake, fellas. Do you want to help me put the icing on? And there were only two songs like that. And Here for Life was one where the way it showed up on the Turn album didn't completely satisfy me, I suppose. Okay. Yeah. So that's why I chose that one. Fair enough too. Great stuff. Yeah. Now, the sound on the album, when I had a listen through it, it's quite varied in its approach. There's some acoustic stuff, and then there's songs that kind of rock out a little bit more, like He Loves Me. Was it intentional just to not be locked into one specific genre, I suppose? Yeah, it really was. And, Paul Coleman, he's been doing a lot of production work of late, and the Return album that the trio released in April last year, that was a co-production effort from the three of us. And I've always felt like I've got this ability to produce. So I actually used this album, Resident Alien, my solo album, as an opportunity to sort of exercise the different production muscles. And the albums that have always spoken to me have not felt locked into a particular genre. Albums that have really moved me, they chop and change and they vary. So there's a common thread because it's my voice singing all the songs and their expressions of my songwriting. But yeah, there's very different leanings of production style. I did that intentionally.
Great stuff. Well, I want to talk a little bit more about your time in the studio as we continue to talk with Grant Norsworthy on the show tonight about his solo album, Resident Alien. This is The Green Room. It's Cam with you. We're still joined in the studio by tonight's very special guest. His name is Grant Norsworthy from the Paul Coleman Trio, and we're chatting about his solo album called Resident Alien, which we'll get our first listen to very, very soon. But Grant, when you were in the studio working on this album, did it feel any different from anything that you'd worked on in the past with the trio or even Sonic Flood as well, because it was your own solo material? Did it feel any different?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, very, very different. A lot easier in ways because there's not a committee to discuss each decision with. And that has a downside as well, but particularly because I was doing the album on an extremely tight time schedule and a tight budget. It was great to just go, I think this, I think that, and that's what's going to happen, you know? And I had an engineer, Daryl Lehman, that I worked with closely, and so there were times when I was saying, what do you think? And I'd take recordings back to my wife, Brooke, and say, Brooke, what do you think? You know, so I would consult other people. But no, it was very freeing, actually, to find that I had the ideas there and I liked the ideas and I was able to realise those ideas sonically as I was making it. So, yeah, that was a first for me. This is the first album in existence where Grant Norsworthy is the producer. And, that was very different. Plus, I'm also looking at a spreadsheet with the budget on it and working that down. I've never really done that before. And I was the guy who was making all the calls on how long to spend on this and how much money to spend there and who to have play on this. And, you know, producing is not just, I think the song should go like this.
Or I think we need an extra layer of guitar. Or,
it's more than that. It's budgets and all sorts of things. And interestingly, some of you listeners might remember the New Map of the World album that the Paul Coleman Trio did. I think it's back in 2002, I want to say.
It'd be 01, 02. It'd be
right,
something like
that was the first album that we did for global release. It's the first album we did on a record label, and it was actually an album that was recorded sort of, if we can put it this way, right before the crash of the music industry. And that album was recorded on a X number of dollars budget. The Paul Coleman Trio album Return from April last year was recorded on about a tenth of that.
Wow.
And my record was done on about a third of that. So
it just helps to put it all in perspective, just how tight you were working on in that regards.
Right, and you know, technology helps us do things more cheaply now. But you know, I think if you listen to those three records next to each other, I mean, New Map of the World is probably a very good record, and sonically it's a pretty amazing record with strings and all sorts of stuff, but it doesn't sound 10 times better than Return. It doesn't sound 30 times better than Resident Alien. Not to me anyway. Maybe I'm wrong.
You mentioned the time frame that you had to work on it. You were, I would imagine, in the middle of trying to plan for a PC3 tour, which was earlier this month. And as well as that, there was time with your family, with your wife and son, as you've said. How hectic was it? Like, how quick did you have to turn it around?
It was really crazy. In fact, with me, I guess have to go back to just November of last year. And I'm thinking, I've got these 12 songs, 15 songs that I think are good and should be on an album. And 12 songs showed up on Resident Alien. And the trio's going to do a tour of Australia next January, where I think there'd be a good opportunity to let people know about the album, Resident Alien. And then the third thing that happened was this buddy of mine, Daryl Lehman, who actually worked on the Return album, he called me and said, mate, I've got no work. And he didn't say that because he's an American. Dude, I've got no work. I can get you a deal. You know, a deal on his studio and his engineering time. And he had a very tight frame because he was about to get married in the middle of December. So I think we got once we said, yes, we're doing it, I think we got the whole thing done in about 3 weeks.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So it's really pumping.
And that's without a band. You know, that's with me playing a lot of the instruments, you know, hiring a drummer, hiring an electric guitarist, hiring a keyboard player, and getting it all done. But yeah, it was a very, very hectic time. My wife, Brooke, and my son, Max, didn't see a lot of me. It was long days. And gosh, you know, I actually picked up the manufactured copies of the album on December 23rd. And about 8 hours later, I was on a plane towards Australia from Nashville.
Yeah.
You know, I just got it manufactured in time.
Yeah.
Just.
What was that feeling like when you had the finished product in your hand and you're like, here it is, it's ready for the world to listen to it?
Well, I mean, when I first held a copy of the physical disc, and a lot of people are downloading the music now, you know, so a lot of people do that. But for me to hold the actual artwork and the disc in my hand was a mixture of elation, but also the disc better sound good. So I didn't actually feel what you're hoping to hear me say, I think, until I actually started driving home and stuck the disc in the CD player and started listening to it and go, you know what? I think I've done a good job. It sounds good. I'm really happy with this.
Well, we're going to take our first listen to it in just a moment. Grant Norsworthy and the album Resident Alien, this week's feature album. And Grant, I want to get you to tell us about the song that you're going to be releasing as the first single as well, called Bring Me to My Knees. Up next on Light FM, this is The Green Room. 89.9 Light FM, The Calling of Levi, and I Believe in Us. It's Cam with you tonight, and we're still chatting to Grant Norsworthy from the Paul Coleman Trio about his solo album called Resident Alien. It's this week's feature album. Now, Grant, the first single that you're going to be releasing is a track called Bring Me to My Knees. Tell us about this one, mate. What's the story behind it? How did it come about?
I guess I've become convinced that it's so easy for me to look at the cross of Jesus and see it as a gift that God gave to me. And when I say the cross, it's what the cross represents.
Yeah.
You know, we hang crosses around our necks. We put them on the insides of church buildings and on steeples, and we put them on bumper stickers and things like that. Apparently, especially in America.
Yeah.
This cross represents the thought that God is there, that He loves us, that He actually came to earth as a man that we can call Jesus of Nazareth, but many of us believe He is Jesus the Christ, which means God Himself.
Yeah.
And that's mind-blowing right there. But to go even further, this Jesus, He died on a cross, an instrument of torture, of Roman execution, and He rose from the dead. And the whole idea of that was that He would give us a gift of Himself to show us a better way to live and to be part of something bigger than ourselves and our earth even. That's what I believe. That's what I think you believe, Cam, and that's what many of us believe. Maybe not all of us who are listening right now, but that's the thought here. But it's so easy for me to look at that cross and think, oh, that's what God has done for me.
Yeah.
Full stop. That's where it ends. And that is true. That is 100% completely true. This is a free gift. No strings attached, no obligation.
Yeah.
Paradoxically, however, this free gift costs everything.
Yeah.
This cross is a gift that's been given to me, but paradoxically, it is also what is required of me.
Yeah.
Not that we have to be taken to a hill and nailed to a cross, but no, I'm realizing that if I'm going to align my life with Jesus, if I'm going to accept this free gift of grace, then I need to realize I have to shoulder my own cross. Matthew 16:24 tells me I have to take up my own cross. What does that mean? Well, for me, it means that I realize that my desire to live life my way, selfishly, desire to be seen as cool, to have people think well of me, for people to buy lots of my record or have my songs on the radio, for people to, lift me up, that part of me, that desire has to die. It has to be nailed to a cross in a metaphoric sense. And my ability to accept the grace of God seems to be directly linked to my ability to surrender myself.
Yeah.
Jesus does offer us life to the full, but the life He offers is not an improved version of my life. It's actually His life instead of mine.
Yeah.
So Bring Me to My Knees is this sort of, oh, that's me slapping my forehead with my palm. There it is again. The cross is what is required of me, not what is just given to me. It's both.
Well, let's take a listen to it. Grant Norsworthy and the song Bring Me to My Knees. It's from this week's feature album, Grant's solo project called Resident Alien. This is The Green Room on Light FM. 89.9 Light FM, Grant Norsworthy, Bring Me to My Knees. It's from his solo album called Resident Alien. It's this week's feature album, and we'll look at it again on the show tomorrow night. But Grant, 2012, what does it hold for you, mate? Is this album the start of something for you in terms of a solo career, or how do you see the rest of this year mapping out?
I really don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really don't know. I'm excited to have the record out, my focus for 2012 is to write a book, actually.
Okay. Yeah.
So with word and song in mind, it makes sense to me to be a person who's represented by a book, by perhaps a collection of devotional studies. A couple of years ago, I released a DVD with 7 little 4-minute speaking bites on there. I'm just trying to respond to what God wants to do through me at any given moment. If that's another album, then great. I actually read Oswald Chambers for January 2nd. He reminds us that, no, look, we shouldn't be planning things out too specifically. And I'm trying to be like that. And I just sort of respond as the time happens. So certainly it is a new chapter for me as a musician, because I guess I've always been thought of as being the bass player, the backing singer.
Yeah.
And maybe a guy who contributes to some songwriting here and there. But here is a solo record, and I stand by it. I think it's a good representation of me and my musicality. Could I do better? Yes, I think I could. But I haven't yet.
Yeah.
And maybe there'll be a chance to.
Perhaps.
I hope so.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. And maybe albums aren't the way to go. Maybe if I write 3 more songs, just record those and release those just for download only. And who knows what's happening with the way people are listening and consuming music. But I am seeing the songs that I produce as not a commodity to be sold and to feather my nest with. They're vehicles to connection. So as I travel around speaking and singing, I'm trying to communicate as purely as I can, which is not very, but as purely as I can, what I think God's trying to communicate through me. And if that can be enhanced by a song about it, great. And that's where these songs come from. I want to talk about the love of God, then I'm going to sing this song, Jesus Loves Me. If I want to talk about the work of compassion and how I think I've been seeing the poor incorrectly all my life, then I'll sing the song Rwanda. If I want to talk about stopping listening to the voice of condemnation but listening to the voice of conviction, then I'm going to sing my declaration.
Yeah.
And there's other songs on this album with the same way, and hopefully there'll be more of those.
Yeah, absolutely.
If they're good songs, I'll let people hear them.
Yeah.
If they're bad, I won't.
And that pretty much sums it up, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well, mate, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you about this album. It's called Resident Alien. It's this week's feature album. We're going to keep on listening to it all throughout the week. Thanks so much for your time.
Thanks a lot, Cam. Same to you.
This is The Green Room on 89.9 Light FM.